On a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, we got a very special guest as the Big Rig himself takes a little detour and checks in as the summer has gone on. We'll go over that and so much more, like I said, on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I am your host, Zach Martin. I'm the Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. I'm also the Chicago Wolves columnist doing the Wolves Weekly over there as well. I am the co-host of the Searchcast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Enough about me. We have to go to talk about our amazing guest. I mean, two-time Emmy winner, play-by-play announcer for your Carolina Hurricanes, the host of Canes Cast with, Shane, Will the Thrill Willis. Yeah, and all that good stuff. And, of course, I mean, someone who might be on Santa's naughty list from Sebastian Aho when he was the elf. So you might want to, keep that under wraps and stuff like that. And also, holy melons, if you've seen that very awesome clip with Harris Teeter. We are super excited to have Mike Maniscalco join Locked On Hurricanes. Mike, thank you for taking the time and joining us. And how are you doing?
I'm well, Zach. The summer, it's weird. For when you're in the off season, it crawls by on one day, and then the next day you look and you're like, we're only 81 days away from having NHL hockey. So
yeah,
I'm caught in that weird vortex right now of gearing up for the season, while wondering what else is going on. You want the summer to move along at a good little pace, and we'll get there. But as you know, there's no more off season in any sport, in the NHL in particular. There's always at some point during the day, something's going to break somewhere for somebody. So you got to stay on your toes. But no, it's been not in a bad way. It's been an uneventful summer for me. So I'll get that pace and just get ready for the start of the season.
Yeah, right, for sure. Like you see, it's crazy when you look at how we kind of roll it into the off season, and it's like Stanley Cup final on a Monday. Then you have the buyouts start like 48 hours later. You get the award ceremony on Thursday. Then you get the draft on a Friday, Saturday. Then free agency opens up on Monday. Like, talk about just an insane amount of all right, here's just everything all at once in a week. Like, how I could not imagine. Like, I know for the Stanley Cup teams, that's a quick turnaround. But I mean, just for the Hurricanes in general, like, that's a lot to just go from all right, here's this, and this, like that. Like, how? How do we get here?
The front office has to stay on its toes, and it's one of these things where you could make the case. Could you spread it out a little bit more? Could you give a little bit more room between the end of the Stanley Cup final and then the NHL draft and then free agency? But the summer, as I just said, Zach, it goes by fast, and
it does.
You've got a season that goes 6 months, that goes into late June. And you really, in essence, only have 2 months off. So I don't think that you could push anything further out. Like, I don't think that you'd want to push free agency to, late July. I mean, maybe you could push it a week, but, there's something about, the mile markers of a month for sports leagues of like those being a big deal. The draft is the same way. You want to get the draft done as quickly as possible because you want to get your new prospects in and get them brought up to speed as fast as you can. And, as we always think in terms of just the NHL club and what they're doing in their time frame. You've got your scouts, from your college scouts and your amateur scouts to your pro scouts. They're constantly working. Those wheels are always spinning. There's never, they get like maybe a week and a half off where they can kick back and rest. Usually for the amateur scouts, it's like right after the draft, they can, exhale for a little bit, but then they're off to, whatever is the next tournament that's there. So for me, I actually like the craziness of all this. And in about 9 days later, we go from here's the champion of the National Hockey League to here's the new blood coming in, and then everybody getting mad at their team or their former player for signing or not signing somewhere else.
It's like, oh yeah, thanks OEL for bringing us a cup to Florida, have fun in Toronto, or it's like Brendan Montour is going somewhere else, and you're just like,
why didn't you take this deal when you found out? And that's the thing. And if you've got the question for it, the funny thing is how it all works. Is again, it happens really quickly, especially that July 1st date.
100%.
But for me, Zach, I actually kind of like it that it's all done, and then you kind of know where your team is at. And this is from the front office, ownership, coaching, the players, the broadcasters who cover it. There's the selfish part there. You kind of know what your team looks like by July 4th. By Independence Day in the United States, you're like, okay, this is pretty much the team. There still doesn't mean there can't be a big shakeup somewhere. Still doesn't mean there can't be a big trade. And look, we've seen the Canes. You go back to 2019, their goaltending situation literally wasn't solidified until 3 days before the season was going to start when they picked up Curtis McElhaney off of waivers. So there's still moves to be made, but you have the general idea of what the team looks like. Now they'll have time to come together. We can argue, let's make this draft here, or do you do free agency first and then the draft? I don't think that would ever work. You got to do free agency after the draft. But there's always. That's why the guys in the front office get paid the big bucks to do what they do and have their focus, and they're ready to put the teams together.
No, 100%. And talk about the front office. How about a whirlwind of a time for Eric Tulsky going from assistant general manager to interim to now full-time GM, and then you still got Darren York, thankfully, still as your assistant general manager as well. And of course, I think either way they would have picked a great guy out of those two. I mean, they're both great. Been here for a long time. What are your thoughts on just like how? For looking at Eric and Darren and how the fact they've had to do a quick turnaround and be like, okay, here's a lot more responsibility, and you've got the draft not that far away, then you got free agency. You're basically going into your first ones of those as those guys. Like, how would you think that you're looking at how they were able to manage all that in just a short time?
Zach, you covered, with what happened with Don Waddell and his situation. And look, I wish Don nothing but the best. And
of course, definitely.
You take a look at what he did for the 6 years as the general manager of this team, and keeping things on a path moving forward, always looking to improve. But to your question for if it would be Eric or Darren, either guy who got tabbed was going to be, I think, for me, from the organization standpoint, a guy who's going to do a fantastic job. Just one becomes a little bit more front facing and might have had to. It's weird, and I'll try to speak in terms of Dr. Tulsky's language, going from the micro to more of the macro as far as the dealings of the organization. So Eric is going to get a couple of things that maybe he would have been more hands-on in his previous role, as the assistant general manager, but really leading the analytics department, but things that he was doing. Maybe that's going to move to somebody else as he's got to branch into other things that general managers do. The one thing for Eric that I think people don't sleep on this is it's not just how bright he is. We understand that he's the smartest guy in the room when he walks in. And that to me is a great ace to have up your sleeve. But what Eric, his strength is in being around him is he is a guy who is constantly learning. Like the smartest people are always learning. They're always trying to get better. They're always looking at, is there a better way to do things? And the one thing for the Canes organization where Don Waddell had a great advantage and a huge help for this team in his role was he knows everybody in hockey. So Don could literally pick up the phone and call anybody and say, hey, what about this? Or do we need to do that? Eric learns from that. Eric learned from that. So he's going to be able to do the same thing. The organization, it's really, it's funny for me because when I've been asked about it, the way I know and how the inner workings of what the front office is, it's not going to change that much other than Eric has maybe a little bit more of a final say on what happens. But it has always been a collaboration of everybody comes in, has their say of, hey, what about this trade? What about this player? it hasn't just been, Don Waddell walks in and goes, oh, we're making this trade tomorrow, and everybody just puts their head down and you move along. It was the organization says, we need a player. We need this to fill it. And then that's where, what about this? What about that? And I don't think that's going to change at all. And so that's why, for me, Eric being a little bit more, well, now it's not a little bit more. He's front facing. He's the guy who's going to answer the questions. Why did you make this move, or why didn't you make that move?
Right.
He'll be prepped, and he'll give you the answers for it. And he's also direct too, much like Don. He'll be very direct. He'll be, this is what happens. And then the other thing, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Darren York, and in his eye for talent and what he has done. You take a look at the Canes through the draft, the last 5, 6, 7 years, and a little bit longer, when Darren's really gotten involved with it. He will never take any credit for it, because he will give all of the credit to the amateur scouting department that they have there and what they do. This guy goes everywhere. He has built up really, really great connections in the hockey world. So I think the front office is going to be fine. It's just that it was a whirlwind. It's like you wake up one morning, you're like, not that there was any big news on Sunday in the world, you wake up and it's just how quickly things change.
Right.
And the one thing for the Canes, though, it's you lose the one faction of it, but it doesn't change the operation. This, while yes, it was a shakeup, and people are like, well, where do you go now? It's not going to fundamentally change anything that the Canes have been doing, honestly, in the last 6 years, of how they have been going about their approach of how they value players, how they assess players. Might be, there might be a steeper learning curve for Eric trying to make a deal, trying to make a trade, because, sometimes having that connection where, you worked with, I played minor league hockey with this guy up in the Sioux, and he owes me. You can't call him that. Right. You hear in some of the books that are written from GMs, but if anybody has any hand-wringing or angst about this for the Canes and what the front office is going to look like or how it's changed, you shouldn't, because and Eric's even addressed it better than I can from my point, Zach, where it really doesn't change much of what the organization does. And, if anything, maybe it brings in a new voice who will get a bigger opportunity that, maybe doesn't have their name in the spotlight, or that, from behind the scenes, who can be that next person to say, maybe we need to start looking at doing things this way. But certainly it's a change, but I don't think that this is a seismic shift the way that it would be for some organizations when somebody like Don leaves. And it's funny, because it also, I think, should tell you the job that Don Waddell did is not just the general manager, but the president and the business side of things. And the Canes bringing back Doug Worf to take over the business side. Again, you normally say, well, there's going to be this big change in what happens now.
Yeah, he's been here and done that already.
Yeah, but it's not just that. It's for the organization. It's people who, on the hockey side of things, know how things run, and nothing is going to be drastically different. That is put this team on this path where they're a contender. Then on the business side of things, you have a guy who knows the organization, knows the area, knows what to do. So the Canes are really in. You couldn't ask for me, smoother transition in this situation for how it happened.
No, definitely, for sure. And that's something that's really good I think for the fact, like you said, it's just the way that the Hurricanes already do things. And it's now like we see on the ice, next man up. Now it's all right, next person up for the front office. And that's just kind of the same way. It's just, all right, plug and play, ho hum, let's just keep going and, just kind of figuring it out. Now, there was a lot of changes in the front office, but there's a lot of changes on the ice as well. And we'll get to that here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat. And their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. The one thing I like about the app is the fact you get those great last-minute ticket deals, like I said, flash deals, and their zone deals, and the viewfinder when actually looking at tickets before you even buy them, before you even show up to the venue itself. With their last-minute deals, you can actually save up to 60% off buying last-minute for tickets for sports, along with concerts, comedies, theater, and so much more. So if you want to go to a comedy show or you want to go see a play, you can get tickets deals just for those as well, not just for sports. With their flash deals, you can save more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And talking about more great deals, with their zone deal, you can save more when you choose a section, but you let the Gametime app choose the seat for you. And speaking of seats, the feature I really like is their seat viewfinder, where you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So you don't have to worry about obstructed views or bad angles and stuff like that. You'll know what you're looking at before you even buy your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Welcome back to a segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said at the end of segment 1, we are going to talk about a lot of the changes that have come on the ice. And I don't know about you, Mike, but I think a lot of fans were kind of caught off guard with one Mr. Jake Guentzel and all that hullabaloo right before the draft. And then right after the draft, that was very interesting to say the least. Like, what were your thoughts on just that whole saga of, like, you see Elliot Freeman go on the Pat McAfee show? Oh, they're ironing out details, and then you find out, yeah, no, Jake Guentzel's going to the Tampa Bay Lightning for a third-round pick. Like, what were your thoughts on that whole, just that change from like that Thursday to that Sunday?
Well, my thing is, anytime you get closer to a deadline, like July 1st, and you're talking about unrestricted free agency, the closer you get to that, my feeling, and this is my feeling for it, I don't care if we're talking about Jake Guentzel and the Canes, or if we were going to be talking about Steven Stamkos and the Tampa Bay Lightning, which everybody's sitting there going, oh, well, that deal's going to get done. They'll figure something out, right? They've done it before. So basically, for me, it's always, if you have somebody who's heading towards unrestricted free agency, and we start getting into, we're counting the hours to free agency, not the days, they're gonna test. They're gonna find a way to. Their agent's gonna tell them, "Hey, let's see what's out there on the market." And look, I will never blame any player who's an unrestricted free agent for leaving anytime, because look, this is why you have collective bargaining. This is why you have unions, Zach. This is why you do all of this. And for fans, there's pressure. It's more than just player, agent, and team. There's the player association who wants every player to go out and get the best deal possible. So for when the next group of free agents comes out, these are the tables, these are the metrics, this is what the market is dictating. And you always want to keep pushing that higher and higher, however you can. In the case with Guentzel, look, when you hear a story like that, I always believe, there is something where, okay, we're just got to put, pen to paper, and then the ink will dry and we'll report it. But when you hear, well, there's still a few things to iron out, that doesn't say done deal. A few things to iron out means there is a sticking point somewhere. And I think for me, in this case, and there's no insider information here, but I'm just going to put myself in the shoes of Jake Guentzel's agent. He's starting to see how the landscape was shifting with, all right, now there's money becoming available in Tampa or in another market or someplace else. And then that's where agents have to do their job and say, well, let's just wait before we sign this deal. Let's see what's out there. If we can, it's Thursday, free agency opens Saturday. Let's just see what happens Saturday at midnight. And that's where you can put things in place with the Canes. You're like, well, we're going to dip our toe in the water and we'll come back. And then maybe the Canes, and I do, again, this is nothing that I know or have heard. And again, the motto of Canes Cast, the podcast that I host, they don't tell us anything. We don't know anything. We can
disclaimers. We don't know nothing. This is our educational guess. But this might be it.
This is also, some way that teams throughout all sports work. They'll do you can go and check out what's out there, but if you come back, that doesn't mean the deal that you're leaving here is going to be the deal we'll offer you when you come back. That's happened, and that's actually happened with a couple of Canes players in the past already, and it's documented with how that works. So, I mean, was it jarring? I think a little bit, because when you hear, well, it's just, a few things. Again, it's still a few things. And I have learned in this business, it's not a done deal until it's a done deal where it's signed and it's turned into the office.
Right.
The NHL office announces, yeah, this is done, or the team announces that this contract is made. So I think that's a tough thing. I think that the Canes were counting on Gensel was going to be here to a point of that would address the offense that they had.
Yeah.
But the other players that left, you just take a look at, would it make sense to bring them in for the deals that they signed for? Either
Right.
be the year or the AAV. Brady Shea and Brett Pesce to me would have been a number one pairing on half the league last year. So to lose both of them is tough. I know that you were probably going to click off all of the names that have left. That to me is a tough one, especially with how Brady Shea's offensive game has developed in the last 2 years. But I love that the Canes had a good pivot in bringing in a player in Shane Gostisbehere, who you already know what he can do here with Carolina. He's been here. He knows the system. He knows the coaching staff. But I think that the Canes fans are going to like Sean Walker too.
Again, 100%. Yeah.
And I think this is definitely in the short term. You'll look at it and just being honest. In the short term, you're losing a lot because Shea and Pesce played big minutes in big situations up and down the ice. And it's going to take a while for new guys, and even a guy who, was here for a little bit, to really get back into the system. This is how you have to play. We'll see what it does long term for Carolina.
Right.
I love what they did with the bottom six, getting a little bit bigger, bringing in a player like William Carrier, who the Canes have come postseason time. We've talked about this, Zach. You need to play. You need to play a heavier game. The playoffs are a different game. Well, one, he's got a Stanley Cup under his belt in Vegas. Two, that's the kind of game that he plays. And three, you sign him to a extremely team-friendly deal for what he brings to the party. He's probably not going to score 20, but he's going to be a difference maker. And then for me, I've always liked Jack Roslovic. I liked him in Winnipeg. I liked him when he went to Columbus. He's a right-handed center who I'll see if playing under Rod Brind'amour unlocks a different kind of player in him. Because everybody always was looking for Roslovic, Zach, to be this point producer. Well, maybe he turns into something else. Maybe he turns into a pretty damn good two-way defensive center who takes big draws on the penalty kill from the right side, which is what you need. And he's not a huge frame, but he's a bigger frame.
And he's got speed too. He's really got some good speed.
And those are the things when I'm looking at. I mean, he's not. We're not talking about somebody 6'4", 225 down the middle. This isn't Jordan Stahl Part 2, but he's also not 5'9", 5'10", trying to play down the middle. So we'll see what this can happen here. And I think for him, that change of scenery is going to be good. That's an interesting signing that people look at, and I think not a lot of people gave that any attention. That here's a guy who's coming to Carolina. I look at it, I'm like, that answers a right-handed center question for the team.
Yeah, because I was just about to ask you because Don Waddell, he said that in his end of season press conference with Rod, we want to get a right shot center, and there's technically your right shot center. And I know a lot of people are wondering, well, is he going to be the 2C? Or are they going to move someone else up, or is he going to fit into? And that's something that's Rod Brind'amour and what they're going to figure out too. But you go back to William Carrier, get $2 million per season. You got him for 6 years, which okay, that I wasn't expecting that long of a term. But hey, you're not going to be upset about that with a guy like you said, brings a little P&V, does a little, throws the body around. He might if you get 15 goals out of him, okay, that's kind of like your Steph Nason replacement because you saw, like you said, Gostisbehere. There's your Brady Shea. Yeah. Sean Walker's your Brett Pesce. William Carrier is your Steph Nason. And now you're adding Jack Roslovic. Like you said, it's a right shot center, someone you can bring in. Now you might have a couple more question marks with Evgeny Kuznetsov leaving, which was a kind of a shock to pretty much everyone because no one really thought Evgeny was going to leave because you had 1 year left on that. Like, what were your thoughts when you kind of saw that news kind of break out with Kuznetsov kind of
that was
parting ways?
Yeah, and Zach, that one was I don't want to say completely out of left field for me, but at the same time, I thought that was going to be let's go into the season and see what it looks like, with a regular season and an off season under the belt. And this could be the guy on power play number 2 can maybe put up some points there. He'll have that opportunity. But, a lot of times, things change in the course of the summer. The buyout, or the, what should I say, the, placed on waivers for the opportunity for the conditional release, not a buyout. Sometimes that comes from the player where they're looking at the opportunity of, I was here for the playoffs. He did get scratched in a game. It's like, what's the fit going to be like for him? And maybe that's one of those things where it's like, unless you can guarantee me, he's a veteran player. He wants to know really what's my standing. I don't want to be the fourth line center. I in his mind, he can't be an effective player if he's playing 12 minutes a night. And I don't disagree with that. There's some guys who have to play more. I don't know if he was going to get that here. So that could be one of these things where both sides sat down and said, all right, what do we do now? What are we doing here? What's the future look like? And then maybe you just say the best thing is, it's we appreciate it. Appreciate your help in, the postseason. He scored some big goals. He's a big personality. He was fun to be around in his time in a Canes uniform, from my point. But I really think that this was one of those situations where you looked at it, and I think it's just that, okay, if we're not really sure what the roles are going to be, maybe it's the best thing. Do it now. Give him a chance to find a team if he wants to stay in the NHL or if he wants to go back over to Russia and play in the KHL. He'll have the opportunity to do that, and the Canes will save a little bit of money by letting him go. So, and now you have more money against the space because you still have to sign. And for everybody who's out there, again, I don't know anything. They haven't told me, and I don't sit in on the negotiations, but I can assure you that Seth Jarvis is going to get a contract, and he will be signed in time to play for the season. So now you have a little bit more money to play with a contract that you want to get to Seth Jarvis, and we'll see how the Marty Necas situation will play out with what the Canes want to do with him and what his camp wants to do. Because that honestly, Zach, is the one thing you've asked me about. I do not have an answer for how I see that playing out. I can see a 1-year deal. I can see a bridge deal that gets him to his unrestricted free agency. I could see an 8-year contract. And then I could also see the Canes, trying to move him for something else, which has been documented. A lot of teams have been kicking the tires on Marty Necas to see what his price will be. And then you still have to sign him after that. So this is an interesting one. We'll see what arbitration does if they actually go to arbitration.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. That I will try to tell every athlete in the history of the world, don't go to arbitration, because everybody I've ever talked to who's gone through it tells me it's the worst thing that they've ever gone through. Because both sides are basically just telling each other, this is why you need to pay me, this is why we don't. So
yeah, I can test just from being someone's watched baseball too. Oh, it's never a fun time for arbitration because you don't really want to sit there and hear your employer be like, "We like you, but we don't like you for this much." So, it's definitely that is definitely tough. Well, that does answer a couple of questions I was going to ask because people are going to be like, "Okay, what's going on with Marty Necas and Seth Jarvis?" And it's going to happen. Just we'll know eventually. And before everyone else, December 1st is the deadline for the RFAs that they haven't signed yet. So there's somewhat of a deadline.
Yes.
Mainly for Seth Jarvis, but that I digress. So there is a few more guys we got to talk about real quick, which we'll do here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring them huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available for U.S. customers. Welcome back to a segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, at the end of segment 2, there's a few more guys we get to talk about real quick. I know we've already kind of mentioned Shane Gostisbehere and Sean Walker. I think those are kind of like the biggest replacements that would come under the Hurricanes. I know you talk about Jack Roslovic a little bit too, but I think there's some guys we have to talk about as well. Especially, I know it's a lot of people are like, why, who, and stuff like that. And I think these guys are kind of more, personal and kind of is a depth that you do need now because the Hurricanes finally got the Chicago Wolves. They're back. They got an affiliate again. So, and I always tell people, you need some guys that you need depth where you need them in Chicago that you might need to call them up or, just guys to have because you need to fill out some contracts. So now you got to worry about 50 contracts and you kind of need some guys just in case. And I want to get your thoughts on the fact that you got Tyson Jost and Eric Robinson. So you're talking about former Sabres, guys who play with the Rochester Americans, and they're kind of near your territory and stuff like that. Like, what does it say about the Hurricanes kind of bringing in those guys of a left winger like Robinson, who's got some speeds, got some build, and they also got Tyson Jost, and those guys have experiences with the NHL and also in the AHL.
No, I haven't lived in Western New York in 23 years, so it's I grew up there, but not my territory anymore, Zach.
Well, right, but I mean, it's still.
I know what you're driving at. This to me, like these are signings that, again, people just kind of gloss over. But good teams, you have to have this kind of depth. And Robinson and Tyson Jost, you're going to see them play in a Canes uniform this year. Are they going to play all 82 games for Carolina? Probably not. But these are guys where if there is an injury, you've got somebody with NHL experience that you can count on that can play in a whole bunch of situations. Jost has got speed. This is a guy who, a lot of people feel that there is more for him to give. Maybe this is his role, but his role now in the NHL is a guy who can be a third or fourth line center, depending on the situation for you. More than likely a fourth line center. Robinson, really, really effective defensive player as a forward. You can get him to kill penalties. We know that that's one of the hallmarks for the Carolina Hurricanes with what they're able to do and what they want to do. And I mean, the other thing too, let's face it, if you put a former Buffalo Sabre on your team, you win the Stanley Cup. I mean, that's just that's E equals MC squared right now.
Yeah.
So
and you got two of them. You got two of them. So
there's playing the advanced analytics game for everybody.
Now it all makes sense. It's all coming together.
It's all coming together.
It's all coming together.
And I joke a little bit on that, but I like moves like this because, like you said, you have a minor league organization now, again, and after whatever last year was with the Wolves, and you, Zach, know there were about 3 billion stories of why it happened. And then, as you know, there's one or two why it did. But it's good to have the AHL affiliate again, because that way you don't have to track your players around the globe, literally.
Yeah.
You can monitor their development. You can put them on the path of, this is how we play at the NHL level. This is what's expected. And you can start instilling that kind of core value, that tenet. And it's easier just to keep track of them when you have an AHL affiliate. Again, we told everybody it wasn't going to be a problem for a year, but it becomes problematic when you don't have that affiliate for years because, it's hard to loan players everywhere. And are they getting the playing time that they need? Are they being put in the roles that you want them to as an organization for when you've got to call them up? They know what's expected. Well, now it's put together. They'll know what's expected of them. And I think that this is going to be a good relationship between the Wolves and the Canes now moving forward, especially when you can add veteran players in the NHL who, look, Chicago is not the worst place to play if you're going to be an AHL player. And that's one of those things when I think if you're looking at the Canes, signing these players and bringing them in and going, look, you're going to play in a good city. You're going to play here, and you're not that far away from coming up. Those are really good moves. Those are depth moves where in the years past, in the lean years, Zach, of the organization, the Canes didn't have a player like that they could turn to when there's an injury. Well, now they got two. And again, I think Robinson is going to be a depth player for the Canes. Might he be the extra forward? I'm not really sure, but you can run down. Is Brendan Lemieux going to be a guy with the team all year? Brendan Lemieux to me is a guy you love to have in your locker room, just because of he gets along with everybody. He's got a really, really good sense of humor, and when the Canes needed him, he knows what his role is, and he filled it to a T. And then you bring in a guy like Riley Stillman. Yes, there's the lineage with his dad, Corey, and he's going to wear 61.
Love to see it.
And Riley is a hitter on the blue line.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Now you've got 3 of them now. It's multiplying your odds to win the cup by 3. But you bring him in, and it's kind of a crowded blue line as it is right now, because where is Scott Morrow going to fit into the picture? I think that Morrow playing in Chicago for a year, when you can just let defensemen bake for an extra year or two and get some guys are ready right away. But now you got a guy like Riley Stillman who can step in and play if you need him, and he brings a different facet to the blue line. So everything that the Canes did this offseason, I know that the losses hurt because you knew what you were getting, and they're all great guys. And I'm not just saying that. Jenkins fit right into this Hurricanes team, right with a mold. Like, he was made to be a Hurricane. It did that. That's why I think that not getting a deal done is one that's kind of a head scratcher for everybody. And then you lose a guy who was drafted as a Hurricane and came up through the ranks, and Brett Pesce, and then Brady Shea fit this as well. Those 3 big losses. Teuvo Teravainen, and clearly the chemistry that he had, as whenever you wanted to get Sebastian Aho going, you knew you could put that pair together. And for me, Teuvo, where he didn't get enough credit was how good he was in his own end as a player. He's a gamer.
Yeah.
He's a gamer, and that's it. But this is a team where you've got some young guys coming, and I think you've replaced some experience or some skill with a little bit more sandpaper, because the Canes still have skill. You take a look at that top 6 and dip into the top 9. The skill's still there. Would you love to see? And again, I don't think that they're done.
I don't think they're done either.
The one thing for everybody who follows this team that they need to know, when we talked about the front office earlier, Zach, they kick every tire, they turn over every rock, they are constantly looking to make this team better. And when you hear, well, this player's available, well, the Canes are in on him. That's not lip service. The Canes are in. And look, this could be a big time. We brought up Marty Necas. I'll bring him up one more time. If this is his option, if he doesn't, if we've heard many times players want to go someplace else and then they end up staying, and it works out great for everybody. If it turns out that he ends up staying, well, here's your opportunity to be an offensive force for this team and go from there. We'll see how it works out. But again, it's funny. It's the runway is getting shorter, but we still have a lot of runway before you got to take off with the season to see what the Canes are going to look like.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you said, we're 81 days away, and you're talking about how crowded the blue line is. Joakim Ryan's coming back. He did play 4 games for the Hurricanes back in 2020, 2021. So curious how that's going to work out. I'm just taking a stab at the dark. I think Ty Smith might be our 7th defenseman, because he also did get re-signed in the offseason. Yep. Ryan Suzuki, he got re-signed as well. I'm glad he's kind of back with the Wolves, because he kind of had a bad run in Springfield. He didn't really get a lot of minutes. It kind of, like you said, are you getting the minutes that you need? Yep. He wasn't. Dylan Coughlin was getting more work because he was the defenseman that they really needed. It kind of just didn't really work out that way too. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of changes, and I know a lot of people are kind of like, is the team better on paper? Is it a little bit of a step back? You know what? For me, it's like, I take the season it might be a somewhat of a transition year. Maybe it's let's just go and see how the season goes. Maybe you don't have those expectations like we had last year, where it's like the most favorite team to go win the cup. Now it's like, they're still going to make the playoffs, and let's see what happens. Yeah. Let's not, I think it's definitely a lot of shock to a lot of people, where it's like, is the window closed? Or did the team take a step back? It's like, no, it's just they had to figure out how to work the cap to where they needed to be, because, like you said, Brady Shea and Brett Pesce, $12.5 million combined. You look at Jalen Chatfield's extension along with Ghost, and also you look at Sean Walker. Yeah. They all came in under $10 million for 3 guys, when 2 guys got 12.5. So for me, it's Eric Tulsky and Darren York in the front office are asset management and working with the cap to make it work. Because, like you said, you still got 2 guys that needs to get figured out, and you have $13.8 million in cap space.
Right.
So it's just trying to find a way to make the cap work and know how to work your assets.
Yeah, so. and look, we know that the salary cap should be going up as the years move on, where it's
100%,
so many years. So all of these things that you've got to work with in the front office. And again, I'm going to be very interested to see what the Seth Jarvis contract is like. Is it a bridge or is it a full commitment? We're going to give you, and I think he wants to stay here. He's pretty happy here, and what the role is. But you want to keep some space open because things happen, and the Canes do have. I don't think the pipeline is as rich as it was a few years ago with prospects, but it's still pretty solid. So if somebody comes available, you have enough, and then the cap space to bring in a big name player.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. So, and there's a few other names that I don't get into the geopolitical climate of the world or what deals are going on with other leagues, but the Canes, everybody raves about Alexander Nikishin. I'm not really going to talk about him because I don't know the situation, but
that's I'd say 2025. We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah,
we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
But that's a player who is coming on the blue line. Scott Morrow is there. You mentioned Ty Smith. That's probably your seventh defenseman this year for the Carolina Hurricanes. But now they have a couple of guys who are viable candidates for that role, where in years past, did you really have a viable seven?
Right.
And it takes a special player to be the guy going, look, you're going to be here, but you're not going to play every night.
Right.
You got to figure that one out. But we'll see. There might be maybe a little bit more playing time available with just how this roster is shaken up. And I get that question a lot. Oh, the window's closed. What do you mean the window's closed? You look at this team. They finished, they finished second in the division. They had one of the best records overall in the NHL. And it's like, I get we've gotten to this push now. If you don't win the Stanley Cup, it's the worst season ever and everything has to change for everybody. But again, if you would have told me 9 years ago that the Carolina Hurricanes would at some point be a perennial playoff team that wins a round every year, 6 consecutive years, and they're going to go to the playoffs for a 7th consecutive year, I'd be like, is this one of these deals where I don't have a soul at the end of it? Like, how do I sign up for it and what do I do?
Right.
And look, I get it. You want the push to get forward, but this team is constantly looking at little ways that they can get that improvement. What can they do to get better? And I will remind everybody, in 2018, everybody thought the Washington Capitals' opportunity to win the Stanley Cup was over, and they went out and won it.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but this is a team. You already said it, Zach. This is a team. I no longer make plans after game 82 to, am I going to take a vacation or where I'm going to go? I have to keep April through June open because of how good this team is and what they can do. So, again, interesting offseason. Still going to be. I get the feeling that I might get a call from you in a couple of weeks in August to figure out if something else had happened. But as far as this has gone, I think it just hurts when you lose players that have been part of the system for a while, part of the organization for a while, and then you're like, well, what are you really replacing them with?
Right.
It's gonna look different, but sometimes if it hasn't been for, and this is for, I don't want to look into the souls of all of the fans out there, but I'm doing this right now. For all of you thinking that it needs to get better, but you need to keep doing the same things. You have to do things differently. So maybe getting a little bit tougher. And this is back what we were saying, making, the bottom 6 a little bit more tough to play against. And I wish that I've gotten an update on Jesper Fast, other than seeing on social media that we're seeing that he's out and smiling, but I don't know what his situation is going to be. He is one of those players. I use this a lot. The Canes have had a bunch of them. He's an offensive lineman. If you don't say his name for making a mistake, he's doing his job. But when you say his name and he adds things, he's one of those guys. You missed him in that Rangers series this year.
Oh, 100%.
Like that. So
last game, it had to be the last game of the regular season for him to get hurt. And you're like, seriously, one game.
Yeah.
Miss him for the entire playoff. And you lose Brett Pesce early in the Islander series too. That's another buddy you would love to have in the Rangers series too. So it's just the injured book came at the wrong time once again for the Hurricanes. So you lose Andrei Svechnikov the season before.
Yeah.
Like a week after the free agency or after the deadline, you're like, really?
Yeah.
At the deadline you lose them. But
so that's it. This team, look, there's going to be some question marks that need to get answered. And I think it's going to be up front as far as where do the goals come from. But all right, now is this Andrei Svechnikov you become a 40-goal scorer. I mean, that's a high expectation to put on somebody, but you become a big-time goal scorer. I think we know Sebastian Aho is, and in my eyes, he's a star in this league, and he's a point per game.
100%. Mm-hmm.
Does Seth Jarvis continue to take that step forward? And then you get this question mark at this second line. You know, does Jesperi Kotkaniemi turn into? He's got to give you more offense somehow, some way. It's got to happen, and he knows it, and the front office knows it. But I look at how this team is put together right now, Zach. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to the basement. They're staying right where they are in this league right now. They are a top half of the league, and more than that, they're a top 10 team in this league. Goaltending is a big question. I don't know if you had that one on the bingo card for me, but let's run it. You know, what people need to remember is the goaltending was good enough to get them to where they were. Now, my thing is, because last year was the interesting thing for me about what we're going to do with the contracts. And I always thought going into last year, there was a lot of discussion. Well, if you sign Antti Raanta and you don't sign Freddie, it's Raanta and Pyotr Kochetkov, and they'll split the time. And by the end of the year, you know, Raanta will probably be like the 1B. If you bring in Freddie, well, Freddie would be the 1 last year. Kochetkov, you know, probably would go be the backup, even though you want him to play, but kind of learn in that mix. Well, I think this year it's going to be what I thought it would be with Raanta and Kochetkov. I think that Kochetkov in the perfect world takes the reins, and it's his crease, and Freddie Freddie gives you 39 games and Kochetkov gives you 43, whatever that mathematical split works out to be. But
you get the point. You get the point.
Yeah. I know that people, when you don't win it, you point to, well, what needs to be better? You know, what do you have to do to get over the hump? I think that the goaltending will play itself out again this year for the Carolina Hurricanes, where they'll be fine. The goaltending will be fine. And you got Spencer Martin as well in the system, because you need 3 goalies now. That was a sneaky, kind of quiet, good little signing that the Canes got.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So now you have 3 goalies that you know you can win with at the NHL level. Now it's the Canes now, and this is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I feel like I'm like, you know, wagging the finger at people. How dare you? I'm not doing that. But the Canes now, in my mind, it's no longer about the regular season. It's what happens in the playoffs. The Canes are a playoff team. And when I say they're not going anywhere, I don't want that to be the clickbait tweet. It's they're not going anywhere from their position in the regular season of being one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. That's full clarity, full disclosure. That's my belief on it. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, if people listen to you long enough on here or Canes Cast or just in general watching you call games, I think they should kind of know what you mean by that. It's like, yeah, guys, Mike is just saying, be ready for playoff hockey again. It's year in, year out. Hey, welcome to the playoffs. And, you know, hopefully we get to see a 3rd Eastern Conference final appearance at least. And then, you know, a cup final. But,
you know, the funny thing, Zach, and not to draw anything else here, if you take a look at the East, you know, the Atlantic Division, it's got to be tough if you're Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, and Montreal still has a long way to go. But those 4 teams, when you look up and you have to find Boston, Toronto, Tampa, and Florida, and you're like, how the hell do you get in front of those teams if you're those 4 teams? If you're in the Metro Division, this isn't disparaging anybody else, but if you're looking at the Metro Division, all right, Jersey did a lot, and Jersey should be better this year than what they were last year. But I don't know if the Rangers got better. You know, they were the President's Trophy winner. You know, do you expect them? You know, I love these. Do you expect them to be better or worse? Well, it's hard to go better than 113 or 14 points that they had last year. So they should cool off a touch, right? They'll come down. Yeah. I don't see the Caps really. You know, the Caps have added a whole bunch. I don't know what it does for their mix, and they were a playoff team. Yeah. You know, the Islanders added Anthony Duclair. That's nice, but does that make them better than the Hurricanes? And I know the Canes have lost a bunch. Philly and Columbus still have to figure everything out. You know, they got pieces that they've got to put together. So I look at the Metro Division, and it's not because I work for the Carolina Hurricanes. I still look at this team and what they have behind the bench and that coach and how they play and what they're going to do. And the core of that team, getting Jacob Slavin locked in for what should be the rest of his career at an unbelievable team-friendly deal.
You love it. You just love it. Oh, man, you love to see it under 6.5 for 8 years.
Yeah,
sign me up. Yes, please.
But that's my thing, Zach. So if I don't have anything that I look at this team and go like, oh man, there's huge concerns here. Question marks, yes. But I'm going to go Zen philosopher. We'll see. We'll see if was it a mistake to let these players go. We'll see. And was it? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe this would be the thing that will help this team get better. And the sports landscape today, because of the salary cap, change is inevitable. You get about a 4 or 5 year run with a group, and if it isn't there, but you start winning, those pieces start getting peeled off because teams that aren't winning, well, they want to bring in somebody who's been a part of a winning team, even if they haven't won the cup, but a winning team for 4 or 5 years. So.
6 for the Hurricane. I mean, we've been doing it for 6 years now.
Right.
Guys want to get paid. So you see the difference of 7x7 for Brady Shea compared to a 3.6 for Walker or 3.2 for Gostisbehere instead of 5.5 for Brett Pesce. It's just cap management, man. You got to do it. Unfortunately, I mean, hey, at least we're not Toronto and you got 4 guys at $10 million or plus locked up. So I mean, we're in a better situation than some teams, that's for sure.
Yeah. And again, that's why I say the Canes are not going anywhere from their perch if they're one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, and they should be. They really should be considered that. So
yeah. Oh, I couldn't have said any better, and I think that's a great place to leave off, Mike. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and it's been a lot of fun getting just deep diving into a lot of things that maybe some people haven't really thought about, and definitely some conversation starters for sure. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you just taking the time and jumping on and talking. So before we let you go, I know people should know where to find you, but just in case people don't, where can they find you and listen to your amazing podcast with your partner in crime, Mr. Shane Willis, and all that good stuff?
A little bit of a summer hiatus for us at Canes Cast, which you can
much needed for sure. I bet
it's how schedules worked out this summer. I've unfortunately had a lot of family things I've had to tend to back in the Great White North. And then Shane has a whole bunch of hockey camps where he runs the junior Canes camp.
Oh yeah,
in the summer. So that usually eats up a good bulk of time where we can't really get anything collective on the books. But much like James Bond, we should return in early to mid-August and get a couple of Canes casts on the books to kind of capture everybody up. So again, Canes Cast, you can get it at Google Play. What else is out there? Apple Play,
Spotify,
wherever you're getting Locked On Hurricanes from, and any fine purveyors of podcasts around the world. Remember, we were the number one podcast in Finland for one day. That was with a different co-host at the time, but what a glorious day it was. Everything was right. But yeah, you can find us there. Find me on Twitter. There's the name on the bottom of the screen. I'll try to answer the questions as best I can for everybody who's out there. But as always, Zach, appreciate you having me on. Keep up the good work. And if there's anything that you need me for, don't bother me for a week. I've got to go back home. But then after that, you can call me. So.
I'll sketch it into the book to make sure they give you some extra time off. But so if you guys want to keep up with me, once you're Zach on X, podcast L_Hurricanes, click the link to my bio. You can find out where to find all my articles at the Hockey Writers. You can check out where to listen and watch my other podcast, the Surge Cast. Obviously, links to where to watch and listen to this podcast. Leave a 5-star rating. As it's best friends for life over there at Canes Cast. But for me, if you just leave a 5-star rating and review, I might rate it on the show for you guys. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment and drop a note in the comments. What did you think of this interview with Mike Maniscalco and just the stuff that he talked about? Because a lot of great stuff, a lot of great information to appeal from and just kind of talk about on that side of things. Make sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up button. Let me know if you like the show as well. Share it with all their Canucks to become everydayers just like you. We are over 900 subscribers. We are on the road to 1,000. And if we get to 1,000, I might just do something special for you guys. But I hope everyone enjoyed this. But Yeah, a tease, a little tease. Hey, you gotta bring them back. You gotta bring them back.
Keep them wanting more, Zach. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. It gets the people going. But if so hope everyone enjoyed this Monday episode. Hope everyone enjoys their Monday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.